when you're having fun, when you're feeling you're a lucky one, and all at once a sad cascade comes and says you're done. You know you can
Welcome everyone back, season 5 here. Coming to an end slowly, but we'll still have a few handful of episodes coming out. And today I have a great guest, M. Ross Perkins, coming in from Ohio. Is that correct, M. Ross?
That's right. Yeah, that's right. Just across the border from you.
That's right. So we were just talking about that before we hopped on our long-standing friendship and our open border policy and how
neighborly love for each other. That's right.
That's right. The extended love from Canada going down to Ohio.
Oh, and it goes the other way too. Believe me.
Right on. So, Emrus, I'd love starting these off just a little bit about how it all started for you with music. And I mean, I read some stuff about how your parents kind of like gave you that grandfather teaching of great 60s psychedelic music, and I find that a lot in your music. Maybe a little less so in the latest record, and we'll get to that. But where were some of your key points in as you were growing up that you can remember where music was something that you were always going to have to do?
I just remember performing, for pretending I was performing. So that's like a key stage. I remember like locking the door to my bedroom, being maybe 5 or 6 years old, and I had like a baseball bat and I was playing it like a guitar, and I remember fantasizing that the one of the neighbors back behind us was like a music producer, and he was like, "Hey, that kid over there has got he's got what it takes. He's got the chops," And so I remember like believing that when I was a really young kid. So that's like a stage. But yeah, coming across Van Morrison seems like a place where things really something clicked. Certainly Magical Mystery Tour. I think I was in about the 3rd grade when I came upon the later Beatle material.
Right.
Yeah, that stuff. There were always these little marks where it just felt like, this is just, I want to do what these people are doing.
Right. And I mean, I don't want to unbury old memories, but I heard on a podcast that there was a record that you had that you dropped and it shattered into a million pieces, and you had asked your older siblings, "Can we glue it back together?" or something along that line.
Yeah.
What was that record, and what was your connection to it?
I think it was a Chipmunks record. It was real. You're getting really into the traumatic stuff right out of the gate.
We'll bury it after you answer it. All right. Once and for all.
Yeah, the Chipmunks. It was Chipmunks a Go-Go. That record had all these 60s songs on it. It was cool, and I remember being really little. Like I don't even, maybe 4 years old or something. It's one of my earliest memories is dropping that record. And but yeah,
the trauma that ensued.
Cool stuff. Yeah, and then it led to a lifetime of trying to piece that record back together, figuratively, spiritually, psychologically.
Totally.
I'm still working on it, Chris. I'm still working on it.
Well, I'm here to support you in that.
Thank you.
I remember that record because I was a Chipmunk fan too, because I thought
really?
the melodies were so like good. Like it was like, like, I mean, sure, their voices were sped up by 100.
Right.
I think the foundation
of
it was
weirdly well recorded and stuff. That got me into 60s pop music, and there were just all these little things throughout the childhood where it was just like, man, I love that sound. I love that vibe. Not that I really like set out when I sit down to write, like I want to write something that sounds like it came out, in the 60s or 70s or something, it's never,
right.
I don't know that anybody should sit down and try to do that, but it comes out sounding that way because people, we write and produce what we want to listen to. That's what everybody is doing. And so genuinely what I like is the stuff that sounds like the music that I make, or at least I try to make music that sounds like the stuff that I like,
Right. And when you first started writing songs, what songs were swirling in your head of, I want to write this kind of song, or it to sound like that? Like, were there songs in those first early writings that you recall?
Oh man, I mean, I think I remember wanting to sound like a country artist. I think they call it like new traditionalist country or neo traditionalist country in the late 80s and early 90s. That was kind of, for a period of time when I'm a little boy, that's what I liked. For a period of time I liked, I wanted to sound like Third Eye Blind or something, when I was in, when I was in like fifth grade or so, whatever. So, it always kind of changed. I mean, I think at one point when I was in middle school or something, I wanted to sound like Eddie Vedder. I thought I wanted to make my voice sound real gruff, and kind of like, put this, spice on it that it's kind of silly looking back. So, I mean, you try to imitate, and there's nothing wrong with it. That's how kids figure things out. Thank God I didn't have, that the internet wasn't what it is now, right? Because, who knows? I mean, I would have probably gotten trolled to death, posting some of the stuff that I was doing, and I would, was a little kid. But that's how it all came up.
And Ross, what's your process like? Like, how do you get an idea or inspired, get the song kind of like, constructed kind of down? Like, how do you go about that? Do you usually start with a riff, guitar, and then lyrics come, or do you have a line that comes to you? Like, how do you go about building your songs?
Well, I mean, honestly, the best ones kind of start with I mean, I hate to give away my trade secrets here. This is proprietary stuff,
Well, don't really, no secrets.
Oh,
only what you feel
just
comfortable
for this show, I'll do it.
Exclusive here for the first time.
That's right.
M. Ross.
No,
and his
the best songs, exactly. Yeah, the best ones I feel like sound like they start with the title. If I can come up with a good title, or even just like not even the title, but the main, line of the chorus, right? Which doesn't necessarily need to be the title, but often it is. But that's it. If I can do that, then the whole song gets built around that, and that's when it's like, okay, this is a really effective composition, in terms of what pop music is supposed to do,
Right.
But yeah,
you
it
feel that
often
there's
starts,
is there a formula that you feel that your writing process follows, or does it tend to vary depending on the album, the time of the day you might write? Like, outside influences, do those come into play?
There is, I guess, I mean, a bit of a formula in the sense that, when you're trying to write pop music, there are sequences of information that work really well. So when there are formulaic things that you do in that way, but that's just a craft. That's not really formulaic in the sense that, okay, I always sit down at a piano and I always start with this, or I always use a metronome, or, something like that. But I mean, things end up, you learn little tools of the trade that are really useful, and they do make for really effective songwriting.
Right.
Somebody that talks a lot about that is Andrea Stolpe. Andrea Stolpe she's a songwriter, but she's also a professor. She teaches at Berkeley, and just teaches songwriting. Has written a couple books too, and she talks about those like little formulaic things that you can do. So once I kind of encountered some of that, I did start using it because it's hard not to. It works so well.
Right. And are those like kinds of things that you employ? Like, do those happen like consciously? Like, or is it when you're kind of like hitting a wall and you're, struggling around? Okay, am I getting this? Is this the right way I should be doing it? Like, how do those come into play? Like, is it when you're questioning, like, maybe this song is I'll shelve it, versus
I think that's why a lot of people go to formulaic type of, types of methods and stuff like that. Is like, oh, well, when you're stuck, here's some tips and tricks. to, spur some creative thing. So they use it for invention, which is really cool. I mean, the invention stage is, it's hard to start that part of a writing process. But I mean, I guess, so it's a little bit of both. So it's what's unconscious is the coming up with the little hooky kind of line or whatever, the lyric that's like, oh, that's the song that is going to be based around this idea. That's what comes kind of just naturally while you're driving your car. Right. And then when you sit down to really turn that into something, that's when you can employ these little kind of methods. I mean, I guess it's good to give an example of like what I'm talking about, because I'm being a little bit vague, but Andrea Stolpe talks about toggling. And this is something that is really cool that you do start to notice in pop songwriting when you listen to really successful hit songs. The toggling between either different speeds, for example, like, if your verse is like really rapid, like da 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 da, then maybe your chorus should be really slow, and you toggle to a like da da da, like let the notes ring out, right? That's one form of toggling. You can also toggle in your lyrics, so you can kind of toggle back and forth between zooming in on a subject and zooming out of a subject, and your verses might toggle back and forth. In verb tenses, you can toggle verb tenses. There's all kinds of things that you can do like that to show contrast. So that's like kind of just little practical stuff you start doing as you're crafting it after you've got the initial idea. But at least me, that's what I do.
Yeah, no, I love it. I love that example too. It's great. Because I often talk to starting artists, right, that maybe have a handful of singles out and they're trying to figure this stuff out, right? So I ask a question like that to them and they're like, well, I'm figuring it out. Like they haven't had enough experience with it to be able to verbalize what they might be doing.
You have to make it like a lifelong process to constantly be figuring out new things, in the same way that, like a physician or something needs to constantly be like abreast of the latest and, most contemporary research on a given subject. I mean, like an artist should probably be doing the same thing when it comes to just craft, or whatever that means, for the artist, but to always just be kind of in that process. I mean, in that beginner's mind mentality of just like, I'm a lifelong learner of this thing that I'm trying to do,
Yeah. Oh, I like that. And it's very, it rings true also that it is something you have to continuously practice your craft and adjust, and maybe there's new things that come out, new technology or whatever, and being open to the possibilities anyway. Not necessarily having to change all the time. So that'd be a bit exhausting.
It would. Yeah.
So when you first started, you were very much a DIY artist in the sense that you did everything on your own. Am I accurate in saying that, Ross?
Yeah, and that's still true. I mean, as far as recordings go, now I play live with a backing band, because I mean, I did that by myself for years too, and that was okay. And it had its, there were pros to doing that, but it also was really limiting. There were just so many songs I couldn't perform because I was by myself, and not everything translates so well to a soloist, and so. But yeah, in terms of the recordings, I've always been kind of a DIY type. I have made recordings with other people though, and I've never released any of those recordings. So I've made them, but I've never put any out.
You have a hefty catalog.
It's not like terribly hefty. It compared to, man, there are some people I know who just write and write and write. But I mean, recording has always been something that I really prefer to do by myself. I just don't really like, I don't mind having some help in the studio, but I don't want anybody around when I'm cutting anything. I don't want anybody around during the mixing process. It'd be torturous to sit here and listen to me mix. You know what I mean? It'd be a nightmare. Somebody to sit here for 9 hours while I'm like looping the same.
Listening for like 20 seconds.
Yeah, it's absurd.
Totally.
So there's really, I just don't really see a lot of a lot of reason to have anybody around when I'm working on stuff in the studio.
Right. And the latest, so it came out this year. Let me get the right month. May 2nd.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, actually, just a few weeks ago.
Yeah. What's the matter, M. Ross?
Yeah.
Great record. I mean, it really kind
Thank
of
you.
reminds me a lot of Teenage Fan Club. Like I listened to it, I'm like,
Man, everybody keeps
wow.
saying that. And that's so
Yeah.
cool. That's like really, really cool. And I mean, truth be told, I've never really listened to Teenage Fan Club. And so literally recently I was
Yeah.
like, I got to see what everybody's talking about. And I see exactly what everybody's talking. It's really a
Yeah.
nice comparison. They're very good. So yeah,
they're
no, that's
amazing.
cool. Like all these, I've had, you're like, I don't know. There have been a number of people who've made that
Right.
comparison with this album. So that's cool. It
Yeah.
like led me into some kind of new stuff that I hadn't really checked out
Awesome.
before. But it's always cool to like find things that are like, oh, okay, like I'm not the only person doing that.
For sure. Well, somebody had mentioned to me too, they're like, there's so many musicians out there. There's only so many chords that you can create, right? Like people have been making music forever. Like it's always going to be a somewhat of a repetition or I mean, you're taking stuff from somewhere. It's not an infinite possibility.
Everything is borrowed. I mean,
totally.
everything is borrowed. I mean, and when I listen to Teenage Fan Club as somebody who's like never really gotten into Teenage Fan Club, when I listen, it's like I hear what they're borrowing from, and if I listen to that stuff, then I'll hear what they're borrowing from.
That's it.
There's really, I always talk about like how this kind of myth of creativity, this like, it's silly in the same way that like, to look at like your automobile and say like, well, this is my car, sort of neglects that like thousands and thousands of people's work went into the manufacture of that car. And I don't mean even on a physical sense. I mean, going back in time, generations. I mean, we're talking maybe you could argue that millions of people's labor went into the production of the, so to kind of call anything your own is pretty, it's a little naive.
Absolutely.
And music works the same way. So it's like, to listen to my own music and think that came, solely out of my brain, like I'm God or something, is just a little bit arrogant.
Right. And looking at this record with maybe, a few weeks of like, you get so saturated with it. The release date comes, the release date goes, maybe there's a show.
Yeah.
Like, how are you feeling now? Kind of like with that, the big hunk of this journey of this record, kind of, you've done it. It's there. It's in the world.
Yeah.
It's in the air. There's no stopping it anymore. It's not contained on a CD or an LP. It's a part of the ether. Yeah. How are your feelings about it? Like, did it achieve what you had hoped to achieve with it?
Man, that's a really good question. That's an intense question. This part of the process, I think a lot of artists would relate to this. There's like a part of your process where, after you've released something that took you like 2 years to make, you get this kind of brief glint of this magical kind of celebratory feeling, but then really quickly that is replaced by like a number of other feelings that come up, and some of them are kind of dark. Some of them feel a little bit, it's like a postpartum depression, not to compare it to something that's very
I've heard that before
serious.
I'll tell you,
but it is
times.
It's
totally
I mean, it's an interesting comparison. So like you don't really know what to do with yourself. You wonder what this means now that it's done. It's kind of it's complicated. I think that if somebody listens to it and they kind of derive any kind of thing out of it that brings any kind of wisdom or peace, any kind of calmness to somebody's life, then I mean, there it is. Then it's done. Then it's just go on to the next album. I mean, if you just set your bar like right there, which is a great place to set your bar, someone would be like, well, it's setting the bar really low. I don't think so. I think that's setting the bar just as high as anybody ought to set the bar for themselves, and then like give yourself that grace and say, well, if that's what I get, if one person listened to it and had a great experience or something, or if it just supplemented an existing experience they were having in a way that enhanced it, benefited it, made it more dealable, made it easier for them to cope with it. Then there you go. That's it. Then my record worked. I move on to the next one and try to do the exact same thing again. And that's just kind of where I'm at with it.
Right. And when you're creating records, do you have a plan before, with kind of like an overarching kind of package that you want to see it in? Or is it really just come as the songs come out and it just builds over time? Like, how do you approach when you're looking at a new project of, okay, I'm on to my next record? Can you talk about that mindset a bit?
It's really systematic. Everything I do, I try to be extremely systematic. It just works the best for me. It's everybody figures out what works. I mean, for some artists, it might work to have like scattered notebooks full of stuff, and they're all over your apartment and they're laying all over the place, and you got to dig through 10 of them to find, that lyric that you're thinking of. And that works, and that, whatever. And then, on my side of it, I like everything to be super systematic in the same way that, like when you're doing the dishes, like it makes sense to wash the dishes in a certain order. And you find that 30 minutes of dishwashing, actually, you get a lot more done if you do it in a certain order, right? Okay. So like,
I get that.
That is a lot like what it feels like to put a record together. That like when I'm doing it by myself, I have to take into account the most expedient or efficient way to do that, because otherwise, I mean, a record with 12 songs on it could be a nightmare to produce. If I had to, so imagine this. Imagine I'm like, okay, I'm going to play every instrument on this record on every song. Okay. And I've got 12 songs. Now I want to start with whatever, pick song number 1. Okay. And I'm going to do the drums. Then I'm going to do the bass. Then I'm going to do the guitars. Then I'm going to do, whatever, percussion, keyboards, vocals. I'm going to layer everything up. Okay. And then then what? I'm going to mix it. And then I'm done with that song. And then I move to song number 2. Sounds like just a nightmare to me. Sounds like a nightmare, right?
Like having to do the same process 12 times.
12 more. Yeah, exactly.
And repeat.
Like yes. Right, so by like, time number, by song 5, you're like fatigued, I mean, because so it doesn't really make sense. So some people then they say, okay, well, you do all the tracking and then you do all the mixing. But it's like, okay, am I going to do the same thing sans mixing? And then I do it every, drums, bass, guitars, all of it, do that 12 times. That to me is a little ridiculous. So what I do is I get my sequence. I know what songs are going to be on the record. And that part of the process is like before an instrument really even gets touched, I've got this idea. I mean, for tracking, that is, I have this idea of what the sequence is. So I know my 12 songs, whatever. I will sit down and do all 12 drums. So I have like 2 days, maybe 3 days where I just do nothing but drums. So, my studio, you're also working in small spaces too, so it's like, you have to kind of take into account that. So rather than tear everything down and have to, whatever, if you have to move things around that, I set my drums up and I get them dialed in exactly the way I want. And then I do 12 drum tracks over the course of 2 or 3 days. Then I've got bass day, and bass day, I do 12 or 13 bass tracks. And then I've got guitar week, and it's like a week of just doing all my guitars. And I just do that until finally the vocal is usually the last thing that I do. Okay. And that is cool too, because then you get your backing track sounding really nice without that vocal kind of, vying for your attention at all times while you're working on it.
Right. And do you build it like around a click track? Like you'll play the song and then that's the foundation on which you'll record the drums. And like, how do you,
if you use a click, you end up, it sounds cool and everything, whatever, but it's very robotic. It's just very, it's too locked. And even if you don't perceive it, you perceive it. You are subconsciously perceiving that did not mathematically get off track at any point during that 3 minutes you just listen. I mean, it really feels constricted, and you can feel the kind of life get siphoned out of a recording really quickly when you record it that way. But man, really so what I do, it's weird. I mean, it's if you have to allow for certain fluctuation of time. And so like, because nothing in in life really doesn't possess this quality of ebb and flow, right? So like, you know, you want your recording to kind of sound like the world it exists in, you know? And so like, what I do, again, trade secrets here. I can't believe I'm spilling this. My team is going to be livid.
Right.
But here's
You'll have
what
to have
I
a
do.
conversation with yourself after.
I'm going to really regret this. So what I do is I put a little BPM counter on like, you know, on Logic. I use Logic, but I get a BPM counter, and then I've got claves or something, just anything that can make a clicking sound. And I know roughly I'll use a click track to determine what general speed I want the song to be. So I'll turn a little metronome on, and then I'll sing the song. I go, okay, very, you know, roughly that's where I want it. And then I'll get rid of that metronome. And then I look at the BPM counter on the screen while I sing along the song and tick, tick, tick with it. And I try to keep that BPM plus or minus 3 or 4 beats per minute in the range. So what ends up happening is when I need to speed it up because it's intense, I can speed it up a little bit, and I see that number go up, and then I can kind of moderate it. So I'm doing that very, very intentionally as I build. And that is the first thing that every recording starts with, is me performing the song with basically claves, just tick, tick, tick while I sing, watching the beat counter.
That's amazing.
That's how I do it. Yeah.
I love your process for that. Like, that's because when you're the only person, right? Like, it's, I mean, if you had somebody else there, you could, you know, like, you know, you could play along and they could do the drum, whatever. But when you're doing it all yourself, you have to think about all these little things that you would normally just wouldn't even have to think about.
Yeah, you exactly. You take for granted that.
It's so cool.
You know,
I love it. I love it. So as we kind of come to a close here, Ross, so we're going to listen to Spiritual Kick at the end. Okay.
Oh, good. So, yeah. Based
on what you were saying, can you share a little bit about this song? How it was born, and it's one of the big singles off the record too. Is that correct?
It is. Yeah, it is. Yeah. I wrote this in my studio space. I have a rented studio space in Dayton. And at that time, okay, I'd been in the studio space for several months writing this record, and I'm spending long days in there. I'm in this like kind of unventilated small space at my desk. I'm writing this music. And the whole time I just moved into the space, and it had kind of a weird sort of metallic smell to the space. And I just thought, it's an old building. It's old. What do you expect? Didn't really think anything of it. Wrote this entire album, right? And then one day I mentioned to the people who, you know, maintain the space, I said, hey, there's this weird metallic smell up there. It's kind of odd. I think maybe you should check it out. They call up a furnace guy. Furnace guy comes out and informs me that toxic furnace exhaust fumes have been being pumped directly into my space through a vent literally above the writing desk. I mean, it is directly above the writing desk. Talking for months, Chris.
Man.
So I'm in the middle of a furnace stupor. I mean, you could call it. I'm on like a bender, an HVAC bender. Okay.
And did this add to the trippiness of the?
Yes. Well, when they fixed it, my band came in to rehearse, and I swear to you, I had 3 other guys say they felt like they could see their lyric sheets better about midway through the practice. They were like, I feel like I've got a certain clarity.
That is wild, man.
Yeah. So that's the story of how Spiritual Kick was born.
Well, when we listen to it, we'll listen for the
fumes.
Fumes. Well, I just want to say I really, really appreciate your time. I've loved these stories and the little technical, and like, I love that stuff. And you just tell it so well. You're such a great
thank you.
A great storyteller, which makes you a great artist.
Great questions.
Yeah.
I really appreciate
thank you.
That.
I appreciate it. And great record, and keep it up. Is there stuff coming down the pipe for 2025 that you can share with us? Maybe heading out on the road,
or in Ohio. We've got a lot of dates in Ohio coming up, and
cool.
we stick to our beloved Buckeye State down here. Kind of, just because it's a great place to be and we like it. But we do, we've got hopefully we've got high hopes to one day visit the land of the free up there to the north. So
absolutely, always
and
welcome.
the home of the brave.
We will take
That's
very
you guys
care
now,
of you.
by the way.
Home of the brave,
We're
home of
passing
the
the torch.
free.
Yeah, we're passing the torch to you guys. It's a heavy burden. Carry it well, my friends.
Well, I appreciate you so much. I wish you all the best with this great new record, and I hope to one day see a show. And if you have new stuff coming out and you want to chat ever again, it would be an absolute pleasure. This has been a great conversation. So thank you.
Likewise. Looking forward to next time, Chris. Thanks.
Right on.
He's a guy on a spiritual kick. His buddies all like to mock it. He's got a little string of beats. Well, don't try till you knock it till. He's a newfound devotee. He's a guy on a spiritual kick. He's working on his bodhicitta. He's working on his Reiki chi. He's digging the Bhagavad Gita, baby. It takes a lot of energy to be a guy on a spiritual kick. He's a guy on a spiritual kick. He's trying just to find some kind of peace. And everybody's saying, oh my, so deep, so deep. He's trying just to find some kind of peace. And everybody's saying, oh my, so deep, so deep. He's gone and transcended wanting. He's gone and set his ego free. He's gone beyond the wheel of suffering, yeah. And all the girls are going crazy for a guy